everyone, it's me again, Brittany, and I'm here today to do my June wrap-up. I'm really excited about this video because I managed to finish 11 books in June. I know, 11! Who am I? And they're big boys. Holding up that thumbnail, I'm still out of breath. I'm really excited about this. I actually have some statistics to share with you guys. I kind of did a little wrap-up page in my bullet journal. It's still not finished, don't look. I did like my little statistics area. So let's start with my star ratings. So for stars, I gave 4 books 5 stars, 2 books 4.5 stars, 3 books 4 stars, 1 book 3.5 stars, and 1 book 3 stars. Then as far as physical versus audiobooks, I managed to read 3.5 books physically. The 0.5 we'll talk about later. And I listened to 7.5 books on audio. And then as far as genres go, I read 6 fantasy books. No one is surprised because that's basically all I read. 2 sci-fi books, 2 dystopian books, and 1 contemporary. Let's kind of jump into it because I don't want this to take a million years and I feel like it will. I worked a little on trying to make my summaries better, so let me know how I do. So the first book that I read this month was This Mortal Coil by Emily Savada. I gave this book 4 stars. I actually really enjoyed it. I thought it was a very intriguing listen. I didn't expect it to be what it was. I had no idea what it was going into it. I just knew it was like sci-fi and that Emily Savada had some kind of STEM degree, and I was wondering if it would play into her writing, which by the way, it did. This Mortal Coil follows Katerina, who is a hacker, and she is really, really good at what she does because her father was one of the most prestigious scientists until he got taken away by an evil company called Cartaxis, and they stole him away to find the cure for a plague that has taken over the world. After her father is taken away, Katerina lives alone and tries to survive in this world for 2 whole years before a mysterious man named Coil comes up to her door, tells her her father's been killed, but that he found the cure to the plague. And the only person that knows where the cure is was Katerina. And she has no idea how she's supposed to know, but she knows that her father must have left her clues. So Katerina and Coil go on this daring mission to find a cure to a plague, and there's just so much science talk, so much hacker talk, so much fancy science stuff that I always wish I knew more of, but I just don't. And I really enjoyed it. I loved Katerina and Coil's relationship, which is kind of random because it has like one of those, ooh, he's so hot and brooding, and ooh, I'm just a regular old girl who just is really smart and he's never gonna notice me and it's kind of forbidden anyways kind of situation, but it just had a whole twist to it, and it just, I don't know. I'm really excited to see how the next book is. I'm actually really glad that this was the first book I read this month. A Court of Thorns and Roses is the next book that I finished this month, and I obviously gave this book 5 stars. I am Sarah J. Maas trash. I stan this queen, and I don't regret it. So Court of Thorns and Roses is a new adult series. I would like to point that out. This was originally marketed as new adult and then somehow found its way as a young adult book, but it is very new adult. It has very graphic sexual encounters, and it's pretty explicit in the way that things are portrayed. Court of Thorns and Roses follows Feyre, who is a human girl in a world that kind of hates humans. There is a magical barrier that keeps the Fae and the humans apart that was created years and years and years ago, but there is still an inherent fear that the humans have of the Fae. So when Feyre accidentally kills a Fae that was disguised as a wolf in the human lands, Tamlin, a high Fae, comes and knocks down her door, demanding that she has to come back with him to his court to serve time and do penance for the crime that she has committed. So Feyre is whisked away to this magical world of the Spring Court. She is being immersed in this world that she never knew anything about. She is learning that there is so much more to it, that it might not be nearly as magical as she thought, and she is kind of being asked to help with a plague of sorts that has been set upon this land. I'm sure you know this already about A Court of Thorns and Roses. I feel like this is one of the most popular series on BookTube, but I figured I'd give you a summary because we're trying out my summaries, right? I loved this. I loved everything about this. I loved having the backstory and knowing what's gonna happen and how to feel about certain characters in this. There are so many hints. There are so many hints of the person that he's gonna become in the next book, and I was so shocked to see them because I had never reread A Court of Thorns and Roses. I'd only ever reread A A Court of Mist and Fury a million times. But I reread this one finally. In my first read, I was so innocent to it all, and I thought that Tamlin and Feyre's relationship was so beautiful and wholesome and lovely, but there are so many hints in this one of the person that Tamlin's going to become. I think a lot of people just miss it in this book, miss all the hints of him being overbearing, being overprotective, being aggressive. So I had a great time. I know there are issues, and I know it's probably not really a 5-star book, but it has such a special place in my heart that it is a 5-star book. Maybe one day I'll make a whole video on my rating system. Let me know if you want to see that. This next book I picked up so randomly. I had no interest in reading it. I had no interest in ever reading it, and I just hadn't really heard anything about it except from Emma Books, who loves it. And I am now a stan. I stan this series. It is probably one of my new favorites all the way around. I am making everyone read it. My dad has read it. I'm making my boyfriend read it eventually. And I love it. I freaking love it. So this is my favorite book of the month, if you couldn't tell, and that's Renegades by Marissa Meyer. I was so nervous about this one because honestly, the Lunar Chronicles, I loved the first book and then the rest just went downhill for me, and I had kind of lost hope in loving Marissa Meyer, so I never really wanted to pick up Renegades. And I had put a hold on it a while ago, and then it appeared in my downloads, and I was like, well, okay, I guess I might as well give it a shot, and I fell in love. It was definitely a 5-star read, so let me kind of tell you what it's about. In this world, there are prodigies, which are humans with sort of extraordinary abilities or superpowers, and they're split up in their kind of alliances. There are the renegades, who are the heroes who want to save the world and save the planet and save the world from the anarchists, because the anarchists are the villains. They're the ones that wanted so much freedom for the prodigies that they kind of enslaved the rest of the world, and the renegades came and wiped them off the board and tried to make everything equal. So in this specific story, we follow Nova, who is an anarchist and who has a lot of beef with the renegades. She feels that they're responsible for her family's murder and that they weren't there when she needed them, and she feels that there's still so much worth fighting for in the world, and it is such a good like villain story because you don't really see her as a villain. And then we have Adrian, who is a renegade through and through. His parents are renegades, his mother was a renegade. He believes that the world is good and people are good, and he wants to save it and make it even better. But both Nova and Adrian are harboring secrets of their own, so when they meet and their paths collide and they somehow get entangled and boost the story up even more, it just becomes so much more amazing. I loved everything about this. I loved the secrecy. I loved being able to be in both Adrian and Nova's point of views and kind of seeing how each other saw each other, because there are secrets about both of them that the other doesn't know, and it's just so cool being the person that knows. And the ending was so phenomenal. I was just talking about this with my dad, but it's just like there were 2 plot twists. One that's kind of like they didn't explicitly tell you, but I am pretty sure, and 2 that I didn't see coming. I didn't see coming from a mile away. I had no idea. And then at the very end, when it's literally the last page and it's revealed, and I'm so excited to get to the next book because Supernova, which is the 3rd and final book in this series, comes out later this year, and I'm gonna be there when it releases. I am reading it the day of. I'm so excited. I just love this. I love the way that it makes you feel like you're in a superhero movie, but it's more realistic. After that, I picked up Nocturna by Maya Motain. This is a book. This specific one came in a fairy loot box, and it's stunning, and I really wanted to get to it because it is a Latinx-inspired fantasy. I was excited to see what it was gonna be like, if I would just kind of recognize the culture and feel it, and I definitely did. I feel like it was very atmospheric, and I got what I wanted out of it, but it wasn't amazing. But it's just like all the plot twists in here, all the things that did happen, I just felt weren't absolutely necessary or didn't make a lot of sense. And that's why I gave it a 3.75, technically a 3.5, I'm not really sure yet. I still really enjoyed it. So in this book, we follow Finn, who is a face shifter. She is on the other side of the law, really, and she can change her face. And she hasn't seen her real face in years, until one day she kind of gets in bad with a mobster, and the mobster is telling her that she has to go to the castle and steal an artifact to get her powers back. And her powers mean everything to her, so this is a chance that she's gonna have to take. And then we have Prince Alfair, who is obviously the prince of this world, who has grown up in luxury, who doesn't know anything really about the streets. He is grieving thing. His brother died, and he's still kind of reeling over the whole mystery of it all, and he isn't convinced that he's completely dead. So when Prince Alfie and Finn's stories collide, things go really wrong, because that's the story that we are given in the beginning, but what we get after they meet, and after they unwittingly release an evil into the world that hasn't been seen in millennia probably, they have to try and save the world together, even though they kind of hate each other. And I did really enjoy it. I liked their dynamic. I liked the villain overall. I'm just still really frustrated over the way that the villain was released. I'm intrigued to see what's going to happen in the next book, just because I feel like the way that things left off in this one, it's going to be interesting. The second book's definitely going to have a lot of potential. Not every book that you read is going to be 5 stars, but maybe the next book will be, so we'll see. This next book I actually received in a paid promotion, but I was not required at all to read it, but I was so intrigued by the entire prospect of it all that I just had to put it immediately into my TBR, and I'm really glad I did. I feel like I got so much out of the story. So that's gonna be The Kingdom by Jess Rothenberg, and I gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars. It was really freaking good. It was a very solid book, and it's kind of short, and it's really a fast read. This is set in a futuristic America where things have really just taken a turn for the worse. Climate change is big, global warming is big, and there's just a lot of talk about those things in this book, because we get to see a very beautiful part of it. We get to be in the kingdom, which is sort of like Disneyland, but on steroids. The kingdom is a place where scientists have come together to bioengineer nature and to make their park the most sufficient it can be, and to recreate extinct animals that we haven't seen in 50 years or so in this book. There are polar bears being created, even though, you know, we still have them. It's not for long, you know? And there are mammoths, and there are dinosaurs even, and amazing things. And the most amazing and the most special part about this park are the Fantasists. And the Fantasists are their bioengineered princesses. They are artificially intelligent, they are artificially beautiful, and they are programmed to make every single person as happy as possible. Every single person they encounter has to leave it happy. I mean, the whole slogan is where happily ever after isn't just a promise, but a rule. So we follow Anna specifically, who is a fantasist that is starting to feel things outside of her programming. And one of those things is love. And she is falling in love with a janitor of sorts of the park named Owen, just a regular human guy. That sounds all fantastic until you find out that this is taking place in memories and in trials, because Anna is on trial for having murdered Owen, the man that she supposedly loves. So it's just a huge mystery and a did she really do it? Are they messing with her brain? Can she really feel love? Is she more human than the humans that created her? It's just so good, and there's so many important topics in this. There's like obviously the topics of global warming and climate change, which I think are so important. Obviously we need to try and help the world, guys. And there's talks on animal abuse and the rights that animals deserve to have in places like theme parks and places like zoos. I am a huge animal enthusiast, and I believe that I understand zoos in a certain aspect, but there's so much more that can be done for those animals and so much freedom that can be given to them. I don't know. I really felt a lot. There is definitely scenes of animal abuse in this, and if that is something that you're sensitive to, there's so many trigger warnings actually in this, because there are times where it is sort of suggested that there is things happening to the fantasists that is being erased from their memories the day after. Things that are happening with VIP guests. And that is a whole other talk that is being discussed in this, and the rights that they should have. It was really good. The only reason I didn't give it a 5-star was I did feel like some of the parts were a little rushed. I did kind of guess the plot twist, the ending in general. I didn't see it as that much of a surprise, and they did leave it open for a second book, so I'm kind of intrigued by that. Overall, really good book, 4.5 stars. I highly recommend this. It's a fast read. Next up, I read Flamecaster by Cinda Williams-Chima. This is a series that is actually set after the events of the Seven Realms series. I'm gonna try and give you like a very non-spoilery summary of this book. I gave it 4 stars just to start off with. But this one specifically, it happens after the events of the Seven Realms series, and we follow Adrian, who is a very skilled healer with a lot of magic, and he is kind of on a path for vengeance. He wants revenge on people that have harmed his family and that he thinks the world would be better without. But we also follow Jenna, who is this mysterious girl with a mysterious mage mark on the back of her neck that she's had since birth, and no one really knows what it is because her birth mother gave her up and she's never met her and she doesn't understand what it really means at all, and she doesn't really care to understand because she's just trying to start rebellion against the King of Arden. And the King of Arden ends up looking for her. He is looking for a girl with that mage mark and she doesn't really understand why. So when Jenna and Adrian's story collide, it is just so fantastic. I really like the way that they meet. I love that it's a continuation on the previous saga, and I love that this one's pacing just feels so much better, so much faster, because Adrian and Jenna's relationship moves so much faster than the relationship that happened in the previous book. So overall, I'm really freaking pleased with this. I'm really happy with the story. The narrators were really good if you wanted to check it out on audio. And to top it off, there are dragons. There are dragons. Like, no context, but dragons. Like, what the heck? Like, no one's ever discussed dragons in this world. So when it appeared, I think everyone was pretty shocked, you know, but I was the most shocked. So I love dragons. Like, let's talk about it. Let's talk about my favorite book of all time, basically, and that's A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. I read this month as well. I give it 5 stars. This book means so much to me. I just love it a lot. I love what Sarah J. Maas did with it. I love everything about it. It's just so well done. I don't think Sarah J. Maas is ever gonna do something better than this book. Obviously, I already gave you a sort of summary of A Court of Thorns and Roses. All you really have to know is that A Court of Mist and Fury follows the events of A Court of Thorns and Roses, like, directly after, and we see Feyre struggling. She is struggling after what happened at the ending, and she is in a very, very dark place, and you kind of have to watch her go through it. But we watch her just become someone else entirely, to become a better and bigger version of herself in this book, and I love it so much, so much. I love seeing her on this journey, and it reminds me a lot of Heir of Fire. I kind of mentioned this in my vlog, but Heir of Fire has a lot of the same themes, kind of, where our main characters are in a very dark place and they kind of have to struggle through it and get out of it and be a different person at the end. Or not a different person, but like a better person. Like, they went through it, they survive it, and it's just so well done. And obviously I love the relationship in this. It is one of my favorite things in the world. I don't think I'm ever gonna stan any relationship as much as I stan the one in this book, and I love it just a lot. Like, that's really all I have to say about it, because I talk about this all the time. So yeah. This one's kind of random. I picked up Prodigy by Marie Lu. This is the second book in the Legend trilogy. I read Legend years and years and years ago, and I never picked up Prodigy. And I picked up Prodigy on audio because someone let me know that there's certain events that happen in this series that inspired Warcross, and I read Warcross last month and loved it. It's a 3-star book. Honestly, I think that it didn't help that I hadn't read Legend in so long and I'd forgotten almost everything that happens. I did remember about halfway through the events in the end, but it affected a lot how I felt towards the characters and my attachment towards them and just everything that really went into it. So I didn't feel a lot while I read this book. I just kind of watched it happen and unfold, and it was good, but it wasn't amazing. I didn't feel that much. These books follow June and Day, and June she is a prodigy in the making. She is going to be one of the best military people in her world, because this is a future America that has been militarized, and they are called the Republic. But they did this out of necessity. They did this out of the necessity of war, and also now there is a plague that has been released, and the military is really in control of everything. They're in control of the law, they're in control of the citizens, they have complete control, and June is well on her way to becoming one of the best, and she is caring and still just deadly loyal to the Republic. And we follow Day, who is the opposite. He is not loyal to the Republic. He thinks it's wrong that they do things the way that they do, because they kind of kill people if you're not good enough to be in the military. So that's wrong, and Day thinks it's wrong, and he's sort of a rebel, and June has to find Day, but things don't go as planned, and obviously it sounds like it's gonna be a relationship in the making, and you would probably be right in assuming that. I think I enjoyed Legend more than I like this one, because Legend sets up a lot of the story and it's really cool to watch it happen, while this one kind of like tears it all down and then tears you down and then gives you like a hint of hope at the very end. Last 3 books, last 3 books. After that, I read A Reaper at the Gates by Sabati here. I listened to this on audio. I want to point that out because I didn't listen to A Torch Against the Night on audio. but I did listen to An Ember in the Ashes on audio. The thing is I loved An Ember in the Ashes. I thought it was so interesting. I thought it was such a cool concept, and then I hated A Torch Against the Night. I dragged myself through it. I couldn't get into the story. I just didn't like it. Like, even though theoretically I knew the story was good, I was dragging, and I didn't know why. And I didn't want to pick up a Reaper at the Gates, like, ever. I've owned this for quite a while, and I didn't own it for an even longer amount of time because I just didn't think I wanted to read it. But I finally found it on Book Outlet for a good price, and I listened to this on audio this month because it happened to be on Libby. That was such a good decision. I loved A Reaper at the Gates, which is kind of an uncommon opinion because I know a lot of people loved the first two books, hated A Reaper at the Gates. I gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars. I just think it was really well done. I love the way that the story is going, and I like how it's progressing. To be fair, I kind of hate how the characters are in this book, so I can see why people would not like this one as much because I think it's a very character-driven story. So the way that the characters are acting in this, I can see why people would hate it. This is a story where the plot actually has to take control, while the other two, it was the characters taking control. And it's a very different situation. But I really enjoyed it. So basically, I haven't told you anything about it yet. These books follow Laia, who is a scholar and a slave, and we follow Elias, who is a soldier, and he is one of the most prestigious soldiers that the Martial Empire can have, and that is called a mask. And he trains at this fancy martial academy that creates the best masks in the, well, the only masks, I'm pretty sure. You follow them as their paths collide, and it becomes so much bigger than that because the Martial Empire took over the Scholar Empire 1,000 years prior to this story, and the scholars have been suffering for it for that entire time. They are slaves, they are nothing, they are dirt under the Martial Empire's feet, and this is another very militarized world, and it's so weird. This one's actually based off of Rome, which is kind of cool, but Laia is such a fiery spirit, and she has so much drive in her to want to change, to want more for the scholars than what they've gotten for the past 1,000 years. And you have Elias, who is pure, even though he is a soldier and he is a mask and he's supposed to have this undivided attention to the empire. He is pure and he wants more for the world, not just for the scholars, but for the world. And we also have Helene, who is kind of his best friend, and she doesn't take a very serious place in the first book, but she does later on, so I just thought I'd throw her in. And this one is just so different. The pace is so different. The world is so much more magical. There's so much magic in this book compared to the first two books, and you just have to see all of them be apart again, and that's kind of really hard to watch because where they all are in their journeys in life is so different and so painful. It's a very painful story. They're all going through very hard times. So I'm excited for the fourth book, which I think is the last book, and I'm definitely gonna listen to it on audio because apparently that is the way I should listen to that. I read Carry On by Rainbow Rowell this month. I gave this 5 stars. I loved it. I didn't expect to love it this much. I thought I was gonna enjoy it, but I really loved it. I love Rainbow Rowell's writing in this. I think she just did such an amazing job of giving each character their own specific voice. I don't know, she just did a really good job. This is kind of a fan fiction on Harry Potter, that's what everyone kind of says, but it is its own story. I just think that the way that Rainbow Rowell does it is so fantastic because it gives you the same vibes. It gives you those magic Hogwarts school wizardry vibes, and it gives you the lightheartedness of the friend group and the people and the chosen one not really wanting or knowing how to be a chosen one. It just turns it on its head because in this story we have Simon Snow, who is the chosen one, and he's really, really bad at it, and we have Baz, who is his roommate, and he's a vampire, kind of, maybe, I don't know. They hate each other. They hate each other's guts. It's supposed to be Draco and Harry, kind of, but it's just so much better because Baz, I think Baz makes this story, in my opinion. He is just the best character ever because he's a villain, but he's not a villain. I love it. I love it so much. And I love how Penelope, which is like the Hermione style character, how she's introduced and how much of a badass she is. She is the best, like, mage of her time, and she's doing so many things for it, and she is just really showing these boys their place, but her and Baz get along in the weirdest way. I love watching their friendship. It is so freaking cute. And then we have Agatha, who is Simon's ex, and she's just kind of interesting in the story. But most interesting was the humdrum, because the humdrum is supposed to be like their kind of Voldemort situation, but it was cool. It was cool. I kind of guessed what the humdrum was towards the end, but watching it happen and watching it unfold the way that it did, the ending was very extreme. And I can't imagine having read this when it first came out and having to wait this long for Wayward Sons, because Wayward Sons comes out later this year, and I'm so excited to see what happens. I'm so excited to see Simon and Baz reunited and for Penelope to just show them what's up, and it's gonna be so good. Oh, the last book of the month, the tea. Not really tea, come on guys, you know me. So I read Red, White, and Royal Blue. This was the book that you guys liked most in my TBR for the month. I asked you guys to pick out a book for me that had amazing like LGBTQ plus themes and things like that, and you all picked Red, White, and Royal Blue for good reason. This has been blowing up. This is Casey McQuiston's debut novel, and it has gotten nothing but raving reviews, 5 stars across the board, which is why it's kind of tea that I gave it 4 stars. I talk way more about this in my reading blog, but basically, let's talk about what it's about first, and then we'll talk about the rest. But this story follows Henry, who is the Prince of England, and he is so posh and so adorable and so British, you know? And we have Alex, who is the son of the First Lady. Yes, we have a female president, everybody, and we are here for it. It was just so cool to see Alex's relationship with his sister, and okay, I'm getting off track, but yeah, it has to do with Alex and Henry, and they're both sons of very politically powerful people, obviously, and they hate each other. It is supposed to be a hate to love thing, but the hate doesn't really last that long in my opinion. But they hate each other, or Alex hates Henry at least, and it is so funny to watch them have to become fake best friends and then become more? Yes, you heard it here first. They become more. I know, shocking. But it is super cute, super adorable. I think that the ending was so fantastic, but I had a hard time getting through the beginning. This is the book that I started physically and finished on audio, and that is the 0.5 that you guys might have been a little confused about. But I had a hard time. I think that the pacing was done very oddly in the beginning. It was just a lot of not letting you know that it had skipped ahead in time and suddenly you were skipped ahead in time, but it was all in the same paragraph, like not even an indent. It was just in that paragraph that suddenly they were in one time and then it was 5 days later, which is okay, but it was just kind of confusing every once in a while. And then the other thing I found pretty confusing was in the beginning, the way that people are brought up, the names that you're given, you're just kind of thrown those names, and she kind of just hopes they stick, or she's like, no, she's telling you they're gonna stick because they come up again and again and again. But I had a lot of trouble remembering their names in the beginning, it was interesting. I think that the biggest thing that I had issues with was that I expected this to read very easily. I expected it to read very contemporary, and instead it ended up being a lot thicker, a lot more dense. And so the first half went by pretty slow for me. I really was kind of trudging along because I knew that it was gonna get better. I had like occasional pulled out of the story moments with like the characters where I just felt like I didn't know if that was completely accurate, if that makes any sense. So Alex is half Mexican, and there was a certain scene where he's drinking. So I mean, in a way it makes sense, but for whatever reason it pulled me out of the story because he's drinking and he's very like scholarly, and even though we're told he cusses a lot, I just didn't expect him to just out of nowhere like look at Henry and be like, fuck it up, vato. And it's like, I know that that's a thing that like people say, and I'm aware of it, and I think that it's weird that it did bring me out of the story, and maybe it's just because I don't know. I think it is good in a way that more of like the culture, like the Mexican culture was brought up in this book, like the food, and I wish there actually had been more Spanish, but that scene just pulled me out of nowhere, and I was like, wait, that's weird. Like, is Casey McQuiston half Mexican? And like that was the thought that went through my head. It was more of like a, oh, you're writing this character, but do you really know the culture? And I wasn't sure. Like, I actually don't know, like to this day. Like, please let me know down below if you guys know anything more on it, but that was where I just kind of felt almost uncomfortable, if that makes any sense. But the rest of it was so good. The rest of it was so good, guys. I love the themes that are explored. I love the last half of this book. I love how Henry and Alex are together, and I love how their families take on this role of being really supportive and good people when they don't have to be. Like, they can definitely have taken on that, I'm the president and I'm gonna do this, and I'm the princess of the Queen of England and I'm gonna do this. But they didn't, and I really enjoyed it. I thought that it was beautiful. I thought that the things that were done at the end and the joy and the hope and all that kind of stuff made me so incredibly happy that it made me want to rate this book a 5-star, absolutely. But I knew that the beginning was so hard for me that I didn't rate it 5 stars. I rated it 4, because the beginning was definitely a 3. It was definitely a 3 for me, so I kind of had to even it out between the two. Well, those are all the books that I read this month. I had a really good reading month overall. I really enjoy everything that I read, and I'm really happy that I've been reading more. Let me know, again, your guys' thoughts on the things that I mentioned. Let me know what your favorite book of the month was, if you read any of the same books that I did. Yeah, that's gonna be it for this video today, guys. I love you so, so much. Thank you so, so much for watching, and I will see you in my next one. Goodbye!
We're beautiful creatures.